Good morning and welcome to Tips for Leading Remotely. I'm Chrissy from U-Transition and I specialise in leadership coaching and development. So in essence, that basically means helping leaders in whatever stage of their journey they're at to improve their performance, their personal performance, and through that, the performance of their team and then ultimately their function, department or business. So I thought I'd just put some tips together for leading remotely. So it's something that I've been asked about quite a bit, certainly over the last couple of weeks, what the best tips in terms of helping people transition into that kind of working from home place. So here we go. So last week, we've had some tough transitions. So only a week ago, we were working in really familiar surroundings, maybe our offices, businesses. We had familiar routines. We were able to meet face to face. The working world was familiar. It was comfortable. We knew what we were doing. We knew when we were doing it and how we were doing it. And then everything kind of changed pretty much overnight. So this week, we're working remotely. We're all working from home, or most of us are working from home. We're in a place where everything's changed. So our normal is no longer normal. We're having to create a new normal. So usually when people transition into a remote working place, they do it from a point of knowledge. So they choose a role that means they're going to be going into, say, a field role or an area role, or even a virtual environment, but they do it with the knowledge that that's what they're going to do. And that alone in itself often causes people to have concerns and to sometimes struggle with that transition. So that's doing it from a place of knowledge. When people do it from a place of enforcement, which is kind of where we're at now, we're all being forced to do something that actually some of us maybe don't want to do, some of us were probably perhaps quite excited about, but it's still new, it's alien, and we've not had time to think about how we're going to do it and what we're going to put in place. So that can cause a whole set of kind of emotions, fear, concern, anxiety, and on top of that, we've got potentially our whole family working from home as well. We've got children around us, we've got family around us. So it's not just about working from home, it's about working in a place of total confusion. So typically, change can cause us to react in a way that isn't normal. It is normal in that it's a normal human emotion and it's a normal human typical response. So we've kind of got to forgive ourselves and allow that. But actually, enforced change, any change, but specifically enforced change can cause our minds to kind of go haywire. It can cause us to focus on kind of what feels like a disaster or blow things up out of all proportion. And then what kind of goes on in our minds translates into our behaviours. So what happens is we freeze, we get tunnel vision, we find it harder to think strategically and be future focused, can't see the wood for the trees, we maybe procrastinate, we stop working, and actually we wait. So we get to this place of kind of being frozen. So being a great leader is really important at any time, but it's even, even more so important in times of crisis. And this model that I've got on the screen here demonstrates the impact of leadership behaviours. So whatever goes on in the leader's mind translates into their behaviour. So what you think translates into how you act. That influences and impacts upon your employees. So what they think, how they're feeling, and ultimately then their own behaviour. And that combined drives your business performance or your function department outputs. So actually everything starts and ends with you as the leader. So for me, the top priorities for remote leaders are really about leading self. So very much around what is it that I need to do to manage me more effectively in order that I can then lead my team, lead others effectively, and keep the business running, keep things running smoothly. And then it's also about kind of being aware of the resources and the processes, the systems and the structures that you've got in place to help support that. So I'm kind of thinking, you know, whether it's a global pandemic as we've kind of got now, or whether it's just a normal business change, actually the role of the leader remains the same. So, you know, we have to, as leaders, recognise where people are at. We have to recognise and acknowledge their fear, their concern, but without allowing it to kind of get out of proportion, without allowing it to grow arms and legs and become something that it's not. We need to provide people with as much information as we can, but again, restrict gossip, keep it factual, keep it specific, and keep people focused on the facts and don't allow them to speculate. And we need to plan and prepare in a calm and measured way. So, you know, people will pick up on your uncertainty, your negativity, your indecisiveness, your inaction, because they feel it, and they can feel it virtually as much as they can feel it when you're face to face. So, you know, being in control of you as a leader is really, really important, and probably even more so at this time. So you need to take a breath, slow down, calm down, and allow your people to do the same. So leading yourself, what's important about that? So I think for me, there's probably three things that go on for people. There's kind of this good angel, bad angel, demon, the little voice in our heads that kind of tells you when things are going well, tells you when you've not maybe done things as well. And that challenge of mind, you know, managing that kind of that chatter, that mindset is really important, because as I said before, what you think will translate into how you behave, what you do or what you don't do. And that will be the message that is then translated into your people, to your customers and so on. So managing that is key. There's also perhaps some questions and challenges about, you know, knowing what to do in a remote environment, or knowing what to do now your whole world, your whole working world has changed. You know, what's the plan that we're sticking to, that we're carrying out? And then there's perhaps something around trust. And that might be twofold. So it might be trust around me, so trusting myself as a leader to kind of know what to do the right thing, and also trusting my team, so trusting them to do what I ask them to do now that they're sat in their houses with all these other distractions going on. And you know, a couple of things to bear in mind. I think it's really easy for us to lead when things are going well. It's really easy to make do with the systems and processes that we've got in place, and to make excuses as to why we can't do anything differently, because we're too busy and everything's going well, so why rock the boat? But actually, when things are in the air as they are at the moment, when things change, when things get tough, that's when we notice that perhaps the systems or the processes, the procedures, the skills, the knowledge that we have or don't have maybe aren't as robust as they could be. And that's also when we start to notice kind of the failings of ourselves and perhaps our team members as well. So just something to be aware of. So leading yourself is, as I say, it's the place to start. So we all need to start looking inwards, looking into ourselves, and thinking about what's going on for us right now as leaders. So great leaders know themselves well. They know what their strengths are, and they know what their weaknesses are. And more importantly, they know when to ask for help and support, and who to get it from. And that might be more than one source. So they're not afraid to ask for help. They're not afraid to say, look, I don't know how to do this. Or, you know, I'm not the best person to do this right now because somebody else has better skills or knowledge or capabilities. They're really good at self-care. So they know if they need time out. They know the importance of eating well, sleeping well, you know, doing things that are going to keep them mentally and physically in a good place, because if they don't look after themselves, they're not going to be able to translate that into then looking after other people, be that family or team. That self-care, that kind of being able to manage your emotions and your mindset enables you to remain calm and focused. And that's the place where you'll be able to make better decisions and better informed decisions, because you'll be doing it from a calm and logical perspective, an objective perspective, rather than doing it from an emotional kind of demon-driven mindset place. So it's about breathing. And if anybody wants some techniques on breathing, then I can share some of those with you later. But breathing, controlling your breath, meditating are great ways to just take control in a moment and allow you to kind of regulate your state, bring it back to a calm place, and to enable you to kind of move forward and move on. So if you do all that stuff as a leader, what that will enable you to do is to do the things that people are looking to you for. So they are looking for communication. And actually, when you're in a virtual team or a remote team, communication is key. You cannot over communicate. Often when we've got chatter going on in our heads and kind of mind chat, what we can assume is that we are then translating that externally verbally. And very often it's just noise in our heads. Whatever, typically even in times of kind of normal world, normal ways of working, if you like, there's a general rule of thumb that says no matter how much we think we're communicating, the people below us don't feel that we're communicating enough. They either don't understand it, or it's not consistent, or it's not often enough. So in times of crisis, we need to compensate and over communicate. We need to step up and show up, so we need to be there. So whatever's going on for us, whatever kind of demons or mindsets we've got going on for us, we can't freeze, we can't hold back, we can't stop. We've got to be there and step up and show up for our people. So that's about setting clear expectations, seeking feedback, involving people, involving your team in those decisions, but also holding people to account. So just because somebody's working from home doesn't mean we can't expect them to still deliver. Doesn't mean that those conversations that we were having about, what are you doing, when are you going to do it by, what will it look like, can't still take place. You need to be consistent in your behaviours, consistent in your expectations, consistent in your communication. And what you do needs to be intentional and methodical. So if you're thinking about communication, and I've said over communicate, absolutely, but do it with intent and do it in a way that is meaningful to the people that are on the receiving end of it. Don't just whack out a text every time something pops into your head. Don't send out, create a WhatsApp group and have everybody pinging messages and expect a response. Because those are the things that are going to actually mess with people's mindsets. They're going to mess with your productivity, and they're actually going to slow down what's happening. People will be waiting for that text, watching the text, rather than getting on with their work. So think about how you can be intentional with everything that you do. What's my reason for doing this? What's the outcome I'm looking for? What's the intended result that I want as a result of doing this thing, this activity? And be very aware that people listen with their eyes. We've got a natural inbuilt kind of way of being that we notice behaviours more than we notice and listen to words. So that's really true when people are face to face, but it's also true virtually. If you say something and then you don't deliver, that's what people will notice. So, your words have to be backed up by your actions. People know and will feel if there's an incongruence between what you say and what you do. So stay positive, that's the other thing, but not blindly optimistic. Keep it realistic. So we don't want to be talking about doom and gloom. And, if you listen to the news all day, it would be really easy to kind of feel like the world has ended and we're never coming out of this alive, and, the world is a terrible place. So, let's talk about practicalities, what we know, what we don't know, but keep it positive. We can get through this. What are the options? What are the things that we can control and we can manage, as opposed to focusing on the things that are totally out of our control? And if people want some ideas on how to do that, I've got lots of exercises that you can work through either independently or with your team if you want to ask me about that later. And be truthful and be honest, and share how you feel. There's nothing wrong with kind of saying, do you know what, yeah, I'm not sure about what's happening at the moment, or I'm a little bit uncomfortable working from home. that's absolutely fine. It shows vulnerability. It shows that you're not, you know, in a totally different place to them. So, you know, share what's going on with you, but do it in a way that is, as I say, positive and not going to freak people into a place of, oh my God, the world is ending. Okay. So, leading others then is the next, the next kind of section. I think for me, the important thing to remember about your team is that they're still the same people they were 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So, you know, if you're thinking about trust and capabilities and skill sets, those people still have the same performance status, if you like, that they did have 2 weeks ago. So those great performers will still be great performers. Those that perhaps were struggling a couple of weeks ago may still be struggling. So you need to think about each member of your team in the context of what might they need individually from a support perspective. And then as a collective, you know, as a collective, isolation is not a great place for humans in general. We are a social being, if you like. We need connection. We need to be around people. So, you know, you need to work to create a conscious and intentional human connection with your team as a collective and maintain that with the individuals. So I've already kind of said about the over communication. Think about the routines that you have in place already within your kind of your old world working environment, if you like. So if you had team meetings, if you had one-to-ones, if you had huddles and creative spaces, keep those going, but communicate with your team how they will happen in this new world. And you know, if they always happened on a Monday previously, keep them happening on a Monday now. But also think about what you don't have in place. What are the gaps perhaps that you need in this world of kind of this new world that you didn't need 2 weeks ago, that actually would help you feel more connected, provide them with the information that they need, or the tools and resources that they need to get the job done. So, you know, and you've also got to allow people the trust, if you like, to get on with it. So it's not easy. You can't just run past somebody's desk and say, oh, how are you doing with that? You know, where are you up to with that thing that we agreed you were going to do? You've got to trust that people will get on with it. So it's important, I think, to set objectives that are perhaps longer term. So maybe you would have asked for, you know, where you're going to be in the next hour when you were face to face. Perhaps now it's about where you're going to be by the end of the day. And allow people to manage their time, have the agreement that this task, this activity will be done, and this is the time frame it will be done within, but allow them that flexibility, if you like, to manage it around all the other stuff that's going at home for them, be it that they've got homework to do with the kids, they may have people to look after, you know, sick family members and so on. So have systems and processes in place that will support your team to work and you to allow them to work within that framework, but also will allow you as the leader to check in on them, to offer them support, but also to be able to hold them to account as well, because at the end of the day, we still have businesses and objectives to achieve. So some ideas you might want to consider. So, you know, Monday morning is a good place to start. If you haven't got it in place, have a Monday morning meeting where perhaps everybody is on the call. You have a Zoom call or a Skype call or something like that, and you all agree the top 3 priorities and objectives that you're going to be working on for the week. You tell each other when it's going to be delivered by, any perceived obstacles, and you also ask for any support that might be needed from either the whole team or individuals in the team. And perhaps you can throw into that, you know, achievements, so you can celebrate a bit of success. You know, this is what I managed to do. So I managed to juggle, you know, feeding the dog, doing the kids' homework, and I still got 3 of my 5 objectives done. But, you know, whatever that is, let's kind of celebrate success as well. Think about how you can have maybe check-ins with people that might need it more than others. So maybe those that are perhaps in a place where they need a little bit of kind of an arm putting around their shoulder, or a virtual arm putting around their shoulder. Think about how you can build in work-based one-to-ones. So one-to-ones that are between you and the individual that only talk about the work that is being done, the work that is expected, where they're at, you know, successes and challenges they might be having and when it's going to be achieved by. But then also think about the social side of that. Can you have social one-to-ones or that are really just about that human connection with somebody? So just wanted to check in, how you doing? How's life for you? This is how I'm feeling, how are you feeling? And you can just have a conversation that is not about work, but it's about them and it's about you. And then the other thing you can perhaps think about doing is, you know, make some of the huddles or the virtual team meetings more of a social gathering, if you like. So, you know, you could perhaps think about pet introductions. So, you know, this is my dog, this is my cat, this is my fish, this is what they're called. You could, you know, if you're doing it on your phone or maybe take your laptop, give people a virtual tour of your new office environment. You know, think about ways that you can create a bit of fun and get people to share what's going on for them. The other thing I think that's really important is thinking about proactively continuing to train your team during a crisis. So, you know, this is the time when people can step up and, you know, often will step up. You as the leader are not the person that has to do it all. You know, think about who you can delegate to. Who's the person that has more knowledge or expertise or is better at it than you that could step in and do that job now? Who could you bring on in this this kind of challenging time? Think about, maybe you've got people that are sick or you know, incapacitated in another way because perhaps they've got, you know, other commitments that are taking them away from their workload, or maybe they're furloughed. Who in your team can step up and do more now than perhaps they did, or do different now than they were doing 2 weeks ago? And actually that will set you in good stead for when we do go back to normality, or more of a normality, because you'll have started to ingrain a new way of working, a new flexibility in people, which will only serve you to the good. And the other thing I think is about, you know, I've mentioned quite a few times about holding people to account and work still being needed to be done, but this is a time also to be flexible and understanding. So, you know, it's about putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, recognizing where they're at, and putting in place an allowance, if you like, trusting people to get on and do the stuff that they've committed to do in a way that is allowing them to fit it in with all the other stuff that's going on for them right now. And people want to feel involved. You know, people have a natural desire to get involved. So get them involved in the things that you're doing. You know, if you're coming up with new ways of working, or how can we interact, get them involved. You know, have a virtual huddle that you know is a creative one, where we come up with more effective ways of working, or more effective ways of doing what we're doing now, or we identify what's missing and what we need. A bit of a kind of, you know, what can we start, stop, continue in order to make this working environment more effective and more fun and enjoyable for all of us. So a couple of sense check things. What I've noticed myself is that since the demise of face-to-face meetings, everybody wants to jump on a Skype, or everybody wants to jump on a Zoom, and that's great. But actually, too many meetings means no work gets done. So balance your need for social connectivity and just saying yes to meetings. It's really easy to say yes to face-to-face meetings. It's really easy to say yes to Zoom and Skype meetings as well. So balance out your time. And then some great questions to sense check everything you do. So what is the chance for misunderstanding? So, you know, I may have just been able to tell somebody something in Old World. If I do the same in New World through a virtual channel, what's the chance that somebody at the end of that video call, or at the end of that email, or the end of that text is going to understand what I'm asking them to do? So how can I make it as simple and as clear and explicit as possible? Another great one to think about is, what's the risk to our relationship? So, you know, if I send out that message in the way I've just, you know, wrote it on email, or I'm just pinging out instant messages or WhatsApp messages, actually, what's the risk to our relationship? If I keep asking somebody, where are you up to? What have you done? Where are you at? You know, the risk to the relationship is potentially about they're going to think that I don't trust them. So what am I doing? What's the impact of my actions and my behaviours on the team? And very often, or very much with communication, sorry, think about, why am I sending this? What are my motives? Is it about me and my desire to say, well, if I've told them, they'll know and therefore it'll get done? Or is it actually for the benefit of the team and what I want doing? Okay, so I hope that all makes sense. Then finally, the last bit for me is about resources and processes. So we've kind of spent a lot of time talking about communication, but just some process watch outs, I guess. Even if it seems basic to you, spell it out. Make it as simplistic as possible. When you're on a Zoom call or a Skype call or however you're doing that, Microsoft Teams or whatever, set the expectation that everyone speaks and everyone contributes. Nobody should be able to hide, but support people in with the technology or the skills and how to do that. When you're on calls, speak clearly, concisely and slowly, and don't allow interruption. So try muting if that's possible. And think about your verbal and non-verbal communication. So people will pay a close attention to your eye contact, your body language, your facial expressions and your tone of voice, because we do that normally. But when that's all you've got to look at, because you haven't got that kind of that energy connection face to face, that's what they'll pay attention to. Leverage all the technology that you've got available. So whatever technology you're using, everybody should be clear about the purpose of it and why they're using it. So everybody should be using the same thing. So, if we're using Zoom, we all use Zoom. Some don't use Zoom and some don't use Skype. If we're using Google Drive, we all use Google Drive, but we know what we're using it for. And if you're unsure, make sure you speak to an IT specialist, somebody that can give you that advice about the files or the technology that sits behind it. And then just some things really about kind of managing your overall. Have a routine. Try and start and finish at your normal daytime. So it's really easy when you work from home for the day to just kind of carry on, and to be sat there at 9, 10 o'clock at night still working. Start at your normal time, finish at your normal time if possible. And agree routines with your team. So don't, have your team still working at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night if you've packed up at 5. Try and have a designated workplace. So if you haven't got an office, if you haven't got a home office, and you're setting up in the kitchen or you're setting up in your bedroom or whatever, that's your kind of your go-to office. So try and keep your workspace as you would. So a uncluttered workspace leads to an uncluttered mind. And then structure your day like you would in the office. So we've already kind of spoken about what that might look like from a work and planning and meeting perspective. And also communicate expectations with anyone who will be home with you. So if you're going on a call, make sure that you haven't got interruptions or you're unlikely to be interrupted unless it's okay for that to happen. So you might want to think about, notes on the door with maybe a traffic light system, red, no entry, green, come on in. Or, think about how you might, use Post-its and pens on the floor outside the door if you've got kids, for them to write you little notes and post it under the door to you whilst you've got the red traffic light on, so they feel they can still communicate to you. But then, once the door's open and you're finished, then you can have that chat with them. And that's about it. So I've got a Leadership Success Toolkit Facebook group, if anybody would like to look at that and join that. I'm going to be posting some tips and techniques kind of daily to help people through. You can contact me at the address or the telephone number on the screen. And I'd be more than happy to have a chat about anything that might be bothering you, or thinking about how you might more effectively lead remotely, or just manage your mindset differently to make sure that you're in a better place to kind of help you to help your team. Okay, so that's about it. Does anybody have any questions? very much for joining, and I will see you soon. Bye for now.